What do Apple, Nvidia, and Meta platforms have in common? If you guessed that all three of them are massive companies that have outsized weightings in most North American investors' portfolios, you'd be right. Apple, Nvidia, and Meta are massive companies, collectively making up about 15% of the total US stock market. But they have more in common than just that. In addition to being massive American companies, all three just mentioned do all of their manufacturing in either China or Taiwan. The iPhone, the Meta Quest, Nvidia's world-renowned AI accelerator chips, without which the meteoric rise of ChatGPT and generative AI would never have been possible. Despite being designed by American companies, all three of the products just mentioned are actually manufactured in one of the two historical Chinas. In past years, that wouldn't have been a problem. Chinese outsourcing boosted corporate margins and made lower prices available to consumers in America and abroad. But now, China is keen on reuniting with what it sees as a breakaway province, and it has said that it will do so by force if necessary. It goes without saying that all of this would have a massive effect on the stock markets of China and Taiwan, as well as the US stock market, whose big tech companies are heavily invested in Chinese and Taiwanese manufacturing. If you invest in a typical S&P 500 index fund, your top holdings would likely take a big hit if a war between China and Taiwan were to break out. On top of that, the supply chain disruptions resulting from such an event would probably lead to elevated inflation, making your uninvested dollars worth less too. In this video, I'll explore the causes and potential consequences of a future war between China and Taiwan. I'll explain why policymakers think China will invade its island neighbor in the next decade. I'll show that the consequences of such an invasion would be devastating for both nations, as well as for the investing public in America and abroad. Finally, I'll share some ideas for how to protect your wealth from such a possibility. This video's subject matter is heavy, and merits being taken seriously by all investors. There is a silver lining at the end, but before we get there, we need to take a long and sober look at the possibility of a China-Taiwan war and its consequences.
The European Union has accused China of increasing cross-strait tensions by holding military drills around Taiwan.
How China's relentless Taiwan drills illustrate invasion plan.
As China escalates its operations around Taiwan.
China is staging military exercises off Taiwan's north, south and east coasts, involving its Navy, Army and rocket forces.
Over the years, Chinese officials, including President Xi Jinping, have stated their hope to reunite with Taiwan, by force if necessary. What exactly this force would consist of is up for debate, but most experts think that it means an amphibious assault on Taiwan's densely populated southern coast, where 90% of the population resides. This would be concerning enough for the human costs alone. Taiwan has a population of 24 million people, and approximately 21.6 million of them live on the Western Plains, directly in the line of fire of a potential Chinese invasion. Lives could be lost on the Chinese side as well. But for Western investors, the main impact would be a financial one. Bloomberg Economics has estimated that a hot war between China and Taiwan would cost the global economy $10 trillion, a sum that dwarfs the economic cost of the war in Ukraine. The costs would come in the form of material destruction, stock market losses, and mangled supply chains. The latter is likely the biggest concern from the perspective of American investors. While the US government has gone to great lengths to bring semiconductor manufacturing back home, the fact is that many of the most advanced chips are manufactured within Taiwan. This includes NVIDIA GPUs, which US fabs currently lack the capacity to produce. Were TSMC facilities damaged in a conflict, then the US tech supply chains would likely be affected. This is no idle threat. During the COVID-19 pandemic, semiconductor prices shot up dramatically due to disrupted supply chains. Chip companies reaped the whirlwind, at least initially, but those high prices were among the factors that led to the bear market of 2022. Before all was said and done, that bear market wiped $25 trillion off the global equity markets, much of it concentrated in the tech sector. And if the Russia-Ukraine war is any indication, a conflict between China and Taiwan could potentially last much longer than COVID did. So what are the odds of China actually launching a war on Taiwan? To gauge that, we can look at Chinese history. The relationship between China and Taiwan goes all the way back to the founding of the modern Chinese nation. The China we know today was founded when the Chinese Communist Party ultimately triumphed over the Chinese nationalists in a long and drawn-out civil war. After losing the war, the nationalists retreated to Taiwan and formed the Republic of China, which governs the island today. The mainland didn't object to this arrangement initially, but vowed to one day retake the island. When U.S. President Richard Nixon met with China's leaders, Chairman Mao informed him that the Chinese Communist Party could wait 100 years to take Taiwan. 70 years have passed since then. Where do things stand today? Recent statements indicate that Chinese leaders see Taiwan as a renegade province that they are determined to reunite with. In May 2024, Liberal Democrat Mei Ching-te was sworn in as the 8th president of the Republic of China. A Liberal Democrat, his inauguration was widely seen as a setback for the Chinese Communist Party. On May 23rd, China's PLA retaliated, launching a series of military drills intended to punish the separatist acts of Taiwan independence. Accompanying these military moves were statements by Communist Party officials warning Taiwan not to pursue independence. Taiwan, although it acts like a sovereign nation in many ways, is actually an illegally indeterminate state. The UN does not recognize it, instead seeing the PRC as the official representative of the entire Chinese nation. Likewise, most nations do not have formal diplomatic relations with Taiwan. China interprets this situation as Taiwan being a Chinese breakaway province. International interpretations vary. What's certain is that China is determined to take Taiwan, and that any formal declaration of independence by the latter country could trigger the invasion. That's a big deal because located right on Taiwan's western coasts, right in the line of fire of a potential Chinese invasion, lies what Donald Trump called the world's most powerful company. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing, or TSMC for short. You may never have heard of TSMC, but if you're watching this video, you're well acquainted with its products. In fact, you're using one or several of them right now. TSMC is the world's leading supplier of semiconductors, better known as computer chips. It manufactures approximately 60% of the chips sold globally, including 90% of the most advanced chips, such as NVIDIA's H100 GPUs, which power AI applications like ChatGPT and DALL-E. Major tech companies, including Apple, AMD, and Qualcomm, rely on TSMC's advanced fabrication processes to bring their cutting-edge devices to life. What makes TSMC so indispensable is its leadership position in producing the most advanced chips. While many semiconductor companies design chips, few possess the ability to actually manufacture them. Apart from Intel and Samsung, tech companies rely on TSM to build the physical chips they want. So just how dependent are the biggest tech companies on TSMC? This might put it in perspective. TSMC is Apple's exclusive manufacturing partner and reportedly builds the majority of NVIDIA chips as well. No TSMC, no iPhone. No TSMC, no generative AI. This company is a big deal, and it just so happens that several of its key facilities are directly in what some believe would be China's line of attack were it to invade Taiwan. What you're looking at right now is a map drawn by Sam Cranny-Evans, a research analyst at London's Royal United Services Institute. It shows where Evans believes China would land after launching an amphibious assault on Taiwan. The location of the 6th Army on Evans' map corresponds to the city of Hsinchu, where TSMC is headquartered. If a China-Taiwan war broke out and Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing facilities were caught in the line of fire, the damage to the global tech industry would be incalculable. In 2023 alone, TSMC shipped $69.3 billion worth of computer chips, about 60% of the world's total supply. Its market share in the most advanced chips is closer to 90%. A disruption in TSMC's operations would create severe shortages, crippling industries reliant on semiconductors, from smartphones and computers to cars and medical devices. The ripple effects would likely trigger a global economic slowdown as tech companies scrambled to secure alternative chip suppliers, many of which lack TSMC's scale and technological prowess. For businesses, the impacts would be severe. Extreme shipping delays, inflation in consumer electronics prices, supply chain bottlenecks like those seen in the COVID era, but worse. And these business impacts would likely translate to stock market impacts as well. Stock markets worldwide could experience extreme volatility with a sharp sell-off in equities, particularly in Asia. In 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine, investors watched in dismay as their Russian holdings became effectively worthless due to capital controls put in place by Russia and the US. American and Chinese investors could face a similar scenario. It's common in wartime for governments to cut citizens off from the opposing country's stock markets. The United States has repeatedly pledged to defend Taiwan militarily in the event that it's invaded by China. This makes the US a likely party to this hypothetical conflict, which in turn makes the possibility of capital controls very real. And it's not just American holders of Chinese stocks that would be affected. Even investors who stick to all North American portfolios could be impacted by supply chain disruptions. In 2020 and 2021, the world underwent its biggest crisis since World War II, the COVID-19 pandemic. Computer chips soared to unprecedented high prices thanks to shutdowns at Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturing facilities. Smartphones, laptops, tablets, and all other types of products faced major shipping delays due to the difficulty of obtaining chips in that period. If a China-Taiwan war broke out, the supply chain disruptions could potentially be even greater. The stakes couldn't be higher here. If tensions between China and Taiwan escalate, the ripple effects would reach every corner of the global economy, and every corner of your portfolio. The products you rely on, from the iPhone in your pocket to the AI technologies reshaping industries, are built in a region teetering on the edge of geopolitical conflict. A disruption here wouldn't just affect a few tech stocks. It could trigger a cascade of losses across countless sectors, destabilizing entire markets. And the trouble probably wouldn't stop there. In addition to impacting the stock market, conflict-driven supply chain disruptions would lead to inflation, particularly in computer chips, as we saw during the pandemic. At a time when US President Donald Trump is already raising the specter of elevated inflation with his tariffs, that's a risk to take very seriously. Despite rising tensions, China and Taiwan both stand to lose far more than they could gain from a full-scale conflict, and diplomatic back channels remain active. Global economies are more intertwined than ever, and leaders on both sides understand the devastating economic costs that war would bring. Historically, even severe geopolitics-driven market sell-offs tend to be short-lived, as cooler heads prevail and markets rebound once uncertainty dissipates. For investors, this could mean that any short-term volatility from geopolitical fears might open up rare buying opportunities in world-class companies that emerge stronger and more resilient after the conflict. So what do you think about all this? Do you think that China will invade Taiwan? If so, do you think the conflict will have economically devastating consequences? Are you doing anything to protect your money from such a scenario? Leave your comments in the box down below, and if you like this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, and hit the bell button. And as always, happy saving.